I don't know about your time. There is two options. One is a virtual hug, and thank you so much for this. And the second option is we've added a social gathering session because it's the end of day 4, to reflect the days that we had before, the conversations that we had before, make a little tour of the table and talk about insights and thoughts. And I'm sure that there is a lot that you could add value to this part of the conversation as well. So if it's okay for you to stay another 27 minutes, that will be beyond expectation and hope and what I thought would be possible. But if you have to go, I would totally understand. But this is kind of the sequence that we're transiting right now.
We should do that.
Perfect. So let's open up everything, everyone, all the thoughts. It's 4 days of conversations about community, about food, about education, about technology, a whole variety of meetings. Some of you were in all of the meetings, some of you were in part of the meetings. I'd like to challenge you a little. What sticks, what worries you, what can you connect, what feels relevant for your lives? What can you take out of this? I always mention at the beginning of this program that if on Friday when we wrap up, there's not something you can take into your lives, I haven't done my job, because this is what I'm burning for. This is what I'm passionate for. I want to give you something that's more than entertaining on an intellectual level, because I know that you all love the conversations because they're so amazing. And I'm so thankful that people like Ralph commit to this hour spent, or Yashu we had before. So I know that the talks are great, but great is beautiful. But if it's not something that's real, become real for you, it will just disappear in the next 48 hours anyways. So I would like to hear from you and share your thoughts with me. Martin had to leave. So Peter, why don't we start with you? If you have
I mean, it's really hard to it's really hard to find only one thing, but I mean, Ralph, you mentioned the thing for the Google founders that you need a mentor or somebody that believes in your idea. The thing is, it triggered something in me that, I mean, what we're trying to do is that we're trying to reconnect people in the public space. I mean, we've become so disconnected, and we're trying to do it through play. I mean, because everybody enjoys playing, even if you, I mean, in any age, and it's really good for us to play for a dozen of reasons. So the thing is, I mean, we one of the things we're talking about is how we can accelerate it. I mean, we have offices in New York, but obviously we cannot be there because we cannot get into the country. I'm Danish, so that's impossible. And we were supposed to launch in New York and San Francisco over the summer, besides 3 capitals in Europe. So right now we are kind of like reflecting, and I really miss a mentor that knows a lot about that enjoys playing as a thing that can connect us. So that's that's one thing I'm thinking of. So if you know any, then it would be great.
I would have to get a much better sense of your specific objectives, and maybe if you could put that together with Nikki, and then Nikki and I could maybe come up with a couple of ideas.
And I'll connect you guys anyways, as usual, so you can also there.
Yeah, fantastic.
Eveline.
Well, for me, I actually usually need a little bit of time to bring together the bits and pieces. They are quite diverse, I would say. On one hand, there is a lot about education, which is quite fine as well, because it fits towards the projects that I'm about to scale up. And put it like that. There was something related to food, which is of high level interest for me, because that's kind of a topic where we try to think into how much is food and health related to culture and build on this. So we do have some prototypes and projects that are already working in that framework. So I do think of how to connect with these ideas and bridge, but still there is a gap to bridge, and I have to think about this and dig deeper. It's not obvious how I can make use of it. Related to our yesterday's talk, I was connecting with Ares, the first one, which was thinking about the think tanks, and I do think there is a more concrete connection to the work I'm doing, because we probably could run a pilot together. I do see there might be a relatively concrete, let's say, next step towards that one.
So to give you some context, Ralph, one, Eveline works with the Austrian Academy of Sciences, as she shared in the beginning, and we've been working together for a few weeks now. How can we learn from other industries, other processes, like the exponential organization, and turn this into the new level of science, right? What is science? What is it, 4.0? And how would that look like? What can we learn from exponential organizations? What can we learn from other businesses, how they're doing this? And yesterday we've met Aris Zalik. I don't know if you've ever met Aris. He's a systemic thinker. He is also very interesting, smart, connecting the dots kind of guy who says, hey, I need a thinking buddy. And this idea of the search for a thinking buddy, a sparring partner for just thinking, made him come up with an operating system for think tanks and how that would look like. And he shared that with us yesterday.
Yeah, because, you know, my main idea is as well in my projects, I would not create communities. I probably I do that, but I usually create communities with each other. So that's slightly a different approach. I see there is a question or a challenge that we are facing. There is a common purpose, and we are a little bit more working on that common purpose, and then try to see where are there communities that are kind of lacking knowledge on some certain needs, some technologies, and try to bridge the gaps that are in between. So we are much more looking into communities that are already existing and try to support them with knowledge that's available as well, but that's not connected. And to do that in a much more, concrete way and accelerate it. That's a little bit the idea. And how to do that, that needs on one hand an organizational background, which is not given at the moment. Actually, the institutions that I'm working in, especially the Academy of Sciences, is for sure a very hierarchical, traditional scientific institution, which wants to work on a high level scientific from a scientific point of view. But on the other, the question would be, how could you run even an organization within that organization that is triggering a totally different framework of innovation? Because it's a slightly different approach.
And the Academy of Science is run by Anton Zeilinger, you might have heard of, because for non-scientists, he's famous for being the one who was the first to manage to beam an object, like we know from Star Trek.
You know that within MIT, they've got a couple of teams that really are trying to do what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. And also, Nikki, I don't know if you're aware of this guy who's based in Boulder, Colorado, called the Unreasonable Institute.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm connected to some people in MIT, and especially the Media Lab is doing quite a lot of that type of research, put it like that. I have heard about the institute, but I'm not connected to the guy. Yeah, but I will have a look at that. That's true.
Interesting.
I think what might be an interesting idea is a woman who's a commissioner at the European Union. She's Bulgarian. Her name is Maria Gabriel. Mm-hmm. Her portfolio is youth and creativity. And I think it might be worth you trying to find out the name of her chef du cabinet, the person who runs her office, and to say that you'd like to have a conversation with her, because the research that you're doing in the Knowledge for Humanity, I know that would strike a strong note with Maria Gabriel, and maybe there's a way you could get her to recognize you doing some research particularly for her in the EU, in which Austria and the Austrian Foreign Ministry have got a very deep connection.
Mm-hmm.
And I just posted that as well in the chat.
Okay, thank you.
Very interesting. I mean, with science, I think it's interesting because science for me was once was kind of high education, locked away, people who are doing their stuff in laboratories. Then it turned into organizations starting their own science and pushing the envelope. And then organizations like iWire, I don't know if it's also something that MIT is involved, where a science team invited the public to map the brain through a game. So all of a sudden, everyone can be a scientist and contribute to a scientific project, mapping the brain, which sounds like more of a project purely for scientists with high education.
Right.
Marcus.
Let me think about it, Nikki. We can talk about that.
Mm-hmm. Marcus.
Well, I'm a little bit annoyed with myself now. There is actually, first of all, Ralph, whereabouts do you live?
I live in London. I'm in central London.
North, south, east, west?
In
Spot
Camden.
in the middle. Sorry?
In Camden.
In Camden, so slightly north. So I'm slightly southwest. Camden, do you know Highgate at all?
I do.
I was wondering if you'd like to help me on a project in Highgate. 25 million quid. Let's build a school of the future. Guy called Rod Aldridge, who's the founder of Capita, really wants to get things going. It's right by Tottenham Hotspur's football ground. Interested in shaking a few heads together?
Sure.
I'll
Has he got some funds that he wants to set aside to do it?
Well, he's sitting on a couple of £100 million, which is quite helpful. But Tottenham spent spent just over £1 billion on their new football stadium,
Sure.
which is on the boundary of their school. I'll give you a briefing separately. I've sent you a LinkedIn invite. I'll talk about it. I'd love to get you, because I've been bashing doors. The reason why I'm annoyed is because I've been on these sessions and I'm thinking, God, the number of interesting people who are prepared to give up a bit of their time to speak to people and to share ideas, as we've all probably been as a result of coronavirus. And the UK schools, we've got 8 million kids in school. The recent survey is and all those schools have been creating stuff online to try and get learning working. The recent survey of the Telegraph, bearing in mind this is all free, the recent survey of the very recent, it came out yesterday, is that less than 20% of kids are accessing any material online created by schools for education. And I'm thinking, shit, actually, it's not about education. It is about learning, but somehow bloody educators have hijacked the joy of learning and made it into a penalty. We heard earlier about from Jash about as a punishment he had to teach the rest of his class as a punishment. Shit, there is something horrible going on in the world of education, if you like, state education as devised and tested by state-driven assessment tests and standardized tests. And I'm getting so angry each time I meet people that somehow this world is so far apart. Anyway, I just thought so I'm just venting.
You should make contact with it. You should make contact with Anthony Selden, who's just.
I know Anthony.
You know,
I know Anthony. He used to be at
Wellington.
Wellington. Good guy, but he's still powerless because we've got dare I say, the unions are standing in the way. We've got self-protection, blah, blah, blah. You can probably hear I'm venting. So I'm going to.
I've got to hop off very soon, but why don't you just liaise with Nikki and then we can coordinate, at least we can follow up.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Interesting idea.
Amazing.
And just to finish, Marcus, the Thomas School in Battersea are doing great work in that kind of area.
Which school is that?
The Thomas School.
Oh, I know the Thomas, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, really good stuff. But equally in Battersea, there's a school right next to it, which is closed and is doing nothing online.
Let's pick it up offline.
1,000 kids, God's sake.
I love to see things happening here. Right? I mean, your neighbors also over
Yeah.
to that you guys meet.
We can.
Wow, great.
Thank you, Nikki.
Michi, would you like to? You've been at a few sessions, just made it to the closing session of today, which is great. Anything you'd like to play against Ralph and challenge him, ask him, share with him something that's a barrier for you?
What Marcus was saying right now with the assessment centers, and I call it the calibration of education. I don't know if the translation also works. I mean, the word works in German. I don't know if the expression also works in English when you say the calibration calibration of education.
How would you say it in German?
Die Kalibrierung von Kalibrierung des Bildungssystems, quasi des Bildungswesens.
Yeah. How
Yeah.
would you translate it?
Peter, why don't you get Misha to speak to Peter Brook?
Peter Brook?
You know Peter? Peter Brook?
This is his whole area.
Peter Brook.
Have you met Peter? I can introduce you. I've been working with him, the World Summit Award people.
And in addition, to speak to Tanya Vesely, who used to be on the Vienna City Council.
Tanya Vesely, the politician.
Right.
Tanya Vesely, the Viennese from Vienna.
That's
Yeah, I know her. Mhm.
I'll connect you with Peter Brook.
hey, Nikki. I've unfortunately I've been beaten by the clock.
Thank you, Ralph, for extending. Thank you for this session. You added so much value to this program, to this day, and also to the add-on session. Wonderful seeing you, wonderful learning and hearing from you. Have a wonderful rest of the day. All the best to London.
Peter, Evelyn, Misha, Marcus, Nikki, thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure meeting
Very
you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How are you guys feeling? Marcus?
Tired.
I'm also tired.
Too much thinking.
Overload?
No, got up too early and got too much to drink last night.
Oh. So you drank what Michi ate? An overdose?
Yeah,
Or whatever, an overdose.
yeah, some kind of overdose, yeah. Too little sleep.
I haven't had a drink for 5-6 weeks.
Oh, okay.
And for no reason other than I've decided to lose weight. So I've lost just under 1.5 kilos, and I'm feeling pretty good. But and for some reason, I've just been too tired to have a drink.
Okay.
Is that
Good
not
plan.
pathetic? I've got nearly 1,000 bottles of wine in my cellarish area of the house. I haven't drunk any. It's crazy.
That's sad.
Other than your habits of drinking or not drinking, Marcus, how do you feel? How's the whole thing for you? Shaking you up in a good way, in a bad way?
Yeah, it's been it's been really good for me. It's been fantastic. It's interesting because I've joined quite a few, and I do quite a few sort of online resources, usually with about 30 or 40 participants. So much better with a short number. So much better. But of course, the question is, how do you scale?
Yeah, maybe not everything has to be scaled, right? If I am able, so my mission, my reason for being, my reason for doing is change the life of 10 people every week.
Yeah.
And if there's a seed that I can plant, it scales because you guys go out there and share it with others.
Definitely.
Right? You don't eat it. You don't eat it down, swallow it, and shit it out in the washroom. You work with it. You live with it. You carry it out, and that's also something that I always encourage you. Right? The best thing to do is invite friends over next Wednesday, and invite 4 friends, and open the invitation with a 10 minutes talk on the highlights. Right? Because I mean, it's been said so many times, but I strongly believe in, if you want to understand something, you have to teach it. And the more you're talking about what's inside of you, the more you can look at it from an outside perspective. And if people understand what you're saying, it basically means that you've understood what happened to you.
Yeah.
Right? Otherwise, I mean, how many times were you stuck in your brain where you felt like, I can't even phrase it, I can't even articulate it, but there's something, it's just not tangible, and it feels like something, but the moment, and also when you listen to Yash, to Ralph, to Marcus, to Olga, to Lara, to Deanne, to all these people we've met, and while they're talking, it makes so much sense, but once they've left the room, you're with yourself. And you can revisit the recordings, it's great, right? You can go back there, and it's helpful. This is why I put all the recordings online. But it's still in the brain. So it has to get out somehow. And I feel like inviting friends over, I do this. I think things that are clear to me, I start talking about if I would be expert, because I realize where's the gap, where's the dark hole, where's the missing part that I need to fill for myself to actually understand it. And I don't do this after reading 20 books. I do this after the first impulse. Yeah. And I go out there and talk about it. I heard about growth hacking. No, the skills of social intelligence. I went to the first seminar of social intelligence. At the same evening, I blocked in my calendar a webinar that I give, a skills of social intelligence webinar. The same evening where I heard about it 2 hours before for the first time. And it was terrible. It was terrible. It was bad. It was while talking, while sharing, it came to my mind why I have to go back there and redo the first thing, the workshop that I've participated in first place. When I went to Singularity University in June 2015, and that also turned me into being their faculty coach for some lucky reasons, on the flight, I wrote a presentation that I was about to give 2 weeks later about exponential organizations. And I had no idea what it was about. I heard it, I made my notes. Based upon these notes, I made the presentation. To be honest, like 5 years later, 15% of my presentation about exponential organizations are what I've written in 2015. Of course, it develops, right? And then you replace stuff and it moves on. But still, a good portion, good 15% of what's in that slide deck is what I've wrote in the plane. And of course, it feels like so much, and I don't know where to go. Just pick one topic and share it. Pick the think tank, or pick the community conversations. Combine Laura's and Yash's conversation we had today on Monday. Pick the future of food conversation. Pick one thing and talk about it. I think that's
I completely agree. It was just when you asked me, it was just a reflection of just right now. But the thing is, I met with one of my old colleagues, and we were actually talking about these sessions and about how to make it work, because I think this is a really, really good example of where it works. And so kind of deconstructing, so what is it that's working? And I definitely think that the number, but also, the setting and the people you are bringing into our lives. I'm really happy about that. I think it's super inspiring, and I think it's very much about conversations more than preparation, but more like, being open-minded and try to understand different issues. I think that's super interesting. Actually, I've been thinking a lot about the American food industry, but the thing is, when you're not living in the US, in Denmark, it's completely different from the US. So the only reference I have is Food Incorporated. And by seeing that, it's something about that is completely monopolized. So it's like, I think 3 big companies that runs most of the food industry in the US, meaning that I guess it's pretty hard to change. But I think it's interesting to think about how to change it, because it's really needed. and I would love to, I mean, to take part of a movement that kind of introduces new ways of doing food production in the US. The thing is, it's a farmland. I mean, the US is full of farmland. We often just think about it as, I mean, New York City and Chicago and LA and San Francisco, but the thing is, it's just one big farmland. So there's so much opportunity, and I just wonder why they don't, I mean, yeah, spread it out.
So here's, I think I've announced this earlier during this week. Here's a format I invented, if there's something that you can actually say, and I piloted with Diane. And it's basically meet two of my best friends and talk in public. And I've meet two of my best friends in talkinpublic.com. So I own the domain already. I'm going to create something about it. But the idea is on June 1st at 6 p.m. Central European Summertime. I want to have someone, and I'll figure out who this is going to be. I want to have someone to invite two of his friends who he or she hasn't seen in a while for a conversation, and we're just listening.
That's a good idea.
I don't know if you like that format. We can also start if you want to. If you feel like I want to pilot this, I'm open. It's going to be the first one. For now, I've secured the domain. I blocked the calendar. This is how I move forward. I feel like there are a few things that makes me pushing the envelope and then talk about it. But if you feel like, and that's for all of you, Marcus, Peter, Evelyn, and Michaela, if you feel like I want to do this, let me know, and then we pilot it together. It must be two people that are okay with you having a conversation among friends while someone else is listening. And I think that could be a nice opportunity to just share what happened in the past 3 weeks.
Yeah.
It's really
Let me know if you're interested.
Yeah.
You can definitely pencil in June 1st, 6 p.m. Central European summertime for that. And if you feel like you're the one who knows who two people that became distant friends and it's nice to catch up, invite them and do this.
Nikki, how do you feel about this? What are your feelings? You've put a lot of effort into this. What are your feelings?
So there is one big difference. I feel like it works, but there is one major difference between the on-site tours and the virtual tour. No one's ever not showed up at one of the sessions at the on-site tour. Right? You fly to San Francisco, you book a hotel.
Yeah.
Off the grid anyways. You are at every session. And now there is all good reasons for, I wouldn't even call it excuse. There are all good reasons for being partial, for being maybe at every session. But it makes a difference if you develop, like, who's in here, like the three of you, you've participated at every session. Almost, Marcus, you've been at every session. So that's kind of right, it carries us through the week. And there's more, and if this is a group of, I don't want to have more than 10 people. I like it with that size. I don't feel like it's a failure if there are only 3 people in the room. If that 3 people can take something out of it, it's a great success.
Yeah. I
think if it's one person, it's better if it's 2 or 3 people than one person, because sometimes you learn from the question of another. So if there's too much pressure if it's just you. But the group like this, we're 5 people, or today we've been seven people listening to one person on the virtual stage. That's great. I don't need 10. I don't need 50. It's good, right? It works for me.
Do you know, Nikki, what might work? I'm just coming up with a suggestion. Is to maybe have 10 people and each person finds somebody else to present.
So the thing is, I mean, curation of a program like this is the beauty of the program. It's one part is bringing your connections, bring your friends, getting connected to new people. These were every meeting, every person we met was very thoughtful. No, and even though on Tuesday, someone canceled for Wednesday, I went back to all the meetings that I had in Tel Aviv. And I reached out for Gareth and said, hey, we've met last year and the conversation was so great. Are you so flexible? Can you do this? And he said, yes. It was not, hey, just give me one name and a connection and availability. I think it's crucial And I don't know if you feel like any of these conversations were also been okay to have not happened. I think it's crucial to be very careful with who you invite to speak, who you invite, and then also allow serendipity, right? With Ralph, we spoke about, he's working on a project with India and Indonesia, and he wanted to share about the project, but it turns out to be that it can add so much value for all of you that's related to what you're doing, that it was totally different than what we've talked about it. But I know Ralph from so many conferences, and he's speaking so many times. He knows impromptu. He knows how to deal with situation he was not prepared for, and it was great. I loved the session. It was totally different plan, but it was great. I don't know how you feel about it, but I thought it was valuable. So I would not want to pass curation. And if you recommend Olga, and we start with Olga, and I feel like, ooh, this is going to be a session that feels like over after 20 minutes, right? I don't know if you can recall the energy. It was low on energy, right? Her journey was the story, and we had the call with her, and the call was so great. I felt like, yes, this is perfect. But she wasn't prepared for this. She wasn't coached for this. She didn't do it a lot. It was low on energy. I wouldn't say it was bad. Her journey is great. That's why it can never be bad. But the quality of the conversation began after she was done with the part that she was actually wanting to introduce.
Yeah.
And it went really great, right? And so I know that you suggested Olga not for her story, but for her personality.
Yeah.
Right? So her story was not good to tell, even though it's a good story, but the personality is great. And the way how she sees things, and her mindset and her belief system is just inspiring. It was a really good session. For me, one of the highlights of the week. But if it would have been the first 20 minutes, it was like, woo.
Yeah, it would have been, absolutely.
So that's the thing with curation. And I love having conversation about who should speak, but then I want to meet that person, usually more than once, and have a little more time and talk about it, just to make sure that I want to give you a high quality. I want to give you people that I think can impact you somehow.
That's the same as that's the same with me when I'm planning taking kids around. It's just, okay. Maybe it's just one of those ideas which I float, which is bullshit.
So the thing is, no, it's not bullshit. It's a good idea, but I think that the problem is not to curation. I don't know, maybe, but I think the problem is that we spend too much time in front of screens right now. Right? And I totally endorse people's decision not to spend another hour in front of a screen.
Yeah.
And I go to bed with headache every day. Right? I spend 5 hours on the screen. Maybe I don't sit well, so also I have to change my situation here. But I go to bed with headache every day.
Yeah.
And I think as much as this works, it's also, we're not built to have a two-dimensional conversation with someone.
Absolutely.
Right? We need the room.
Yeah.
So I guess that's the price. I think that's what it comes with. That people show up, and sometimes people do not show up, and it's always okay. And I know that everyone who's been in the session enjoyed the session, and that it's not about who's not been there. It's about who's been there, and what you could take out of it. And Johan is totally psyched about it. Johan asked me for a private tour. So I'm preparing a private tour for him because he understands the format, and he feels like I need to bring people into this format, and we want to have a private tour. So we're going to build a tour. I shared the concept with him today. I'm very specific on the topic. It'll be great. So it's okay. Now so the next tour, I think I'm going to, so now I have the Silicon Valley tour in 1 week and the Global Inspiration Tour in another. And I think I'm going to iterate one of them per month. So every 2 months Silicon Valley, and every other month the global tour. Also, I feel like it's, there is a German saying, if you want to be special, be scarce. I think it should, I don't want to suggest that if you're not making it this week, no problem. It's going to be happening next week again.
Right.
Also, I only had one speaker twice in 3 weeks. So also with the next Silicon Valley tour, I don't think we're going to have any speaker that's already appeared in one of the first tours. So, yeah, tomorrow we're in Hong Kong. And it's a little, we're going to meet Vincent Ng, who's in Singapore. I think he's in Singapore, Australia. Singapore or Australia, but he lived there. He just moved there recently, and he's very well connected to the Hong Kong area and Greater Bay Area. and we're going to meet Tony Verb. I don't know if you ever heard of Tony Verb. He is one of the shapers of the Greater Bay Area, if that's a term familiar to you. The Greater Bay Area is basically the Silicon Valley of China. It's from Mackay to, I don't know, the northest city. I think it's altogether 100 million population of innovation and, of course, other budgets. And it's quite interesting how you see powers transform. I just had a conversation yesterday with my friend, and I think that so for us, for our belief system, the United States are the marshal of ethical standards and belief system standards, right? They interfere where they think they should interfere to make sure that our belief systems are secured. But in the last, I don't know, 5 years, we all became Zen.
Became what?
Zen. Zen. Z-E-N.
Oh, Zen. Right, yeah, sorry, yeah.
Our belief system is already changing. We don't even realize that our belief system is already changing. And I think that while we're so afraid of China, at the same time, we're moving more and more towards their belief system.
Well, that's because of Trump.
I have to share this with you. A guy who's actually also my client, and he's like a sponge all the time, soaking in information, connecting dots. Connected the Spanish flu that was the foundation for Hitler to what's later being called the Chinese flu as a foundation for a stronger Trump.
Huh.
Yeah.
Right.
It's scary. It's really scary, I think.
Yes, this is really scary.
Yeah.
Like when you see like, oh, wow, he's talking about in 1910, between 1910 and 1920. It's the Spanish flu and also the weak government and the kind of the citizens starving for a leader. And everything that you have right now, the Chinese flu. Interesting connection. However, I don't want to go into politics here, but I think that there is some. So every time I hear people talking about China, there's a mixture of respect and fear.
Yeah.
And every time I'm in China, I feel like this is not what I was mentally prepared for. So either they're really good in playing a stage, or they're doing their job really well. And then I meet people like Dekai. Evelina, you've been in the conversation with Dekai. I don't know if Peter, if you've been in the conversation with Dekai. It was last week on Tuesday where he talked about unconscious bias. Incredible guy. Really interesting conversation. And you can revisit it. I can share it with you. It's all online. Every tour, every talk is recorded online. And when he talks, and he lives in China and in Berkeley, and he's not a patriot. It's not like my country. Not that kind of guy. So he's really reflected. And when he lists what China is doing, it feels like they do their job well, right? They understand how to live in 5 years plans. They understand how to take care of their citizens. And that's from a population, that's from a culture that doesn't care about individuals. When I was in China for the first time 15 years ago, I learned that they don't care about individuals at all. Right? There's so many, it feels like there's so many people we can just replace them like this, and this has changed in the past 15 years. So I don't know.
I think one of the main things is that our impression of China is driven by propaganda. I mean, we don't really have a true picture of what's going on there. So it's kind of like getting this first-hand impressions are really important. So meeting people meeting locals is extremely valuable because you get, another sense of what's going on, what's good and what's bad. For most countries, not all countries, but not Denmark, or maybe just being funny, but for most countries, you can say something is good and something is bad. So I think we just have to get some more first-hand impressions from different parts of the world. I mean, for instance, for me, Africa is one big black box, and one of my friends, he knows Africa like super well, and we are so ignorant about Africa. We don't know anything about that. that region. It's so many countries. It's like talking about Albania and Norway and Portugal and Austria in the same sentence. It just doesn't make sense.
And it's actually 3 black boxes. It's not even 1 black box. If you understand
exactly.
East and South Africa is so different.
Yeah.
It's 3 black boxes.
Yeah. So actually, so coming back to what you're doing, that's actually one of the really interesting things for me, that is to get some more, perspectives from different parts of the world. I think that's super interesting.
Yeah. And I think Yash somehow gave it today, like how do Indian people think about community can be the headline of his talk, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And I can totally endorse 100% of my experience is exactly what he shared today.
Yeah, it was, and it's really interesting, the thing about the coronavirus, that he's going into a lockdown. And I was just imagining the police just breaking into his apartment saying, okay, now you cannot leave for the next 15 days. Or it's just like, I'm just getting a lot of pictures. Crazy situation.
Yeah. I'm curious about the update. Every time I talk to someone in China, it's a new story. It's an extended story. Last year, I expanded the Silicon Valley tours to global tours, on-site tours last year. So we did Dubai, Tel Aviv, and Hong Kong last year.
Okay.
And it's so interesting to see where these all transform. Dubai doesn't have good reputation.
No.
And it's so interesting because I think that this is one of the smartest places on earth. They have a Ministry of Artificial Intelligence. I don't know if you knew that.
I didn't know that.
They had a future accelerator where they sent 2 ministers from all of their 6 ministries. 2 people from the ministries are represented in the future accelerator, so they can make a decision on site to identify the problems they should have to solve and say yes right now. And then they have 2 billion budget, which is also nice, right? Money is always a good helper, but the money doesn't solve the problem if you make the wrong decision.
Oh, that's right. That's true.
And I mean, what they've built for the Expo, and I really hope for them that everything is going to work out fine for them in October when they start with the Expo. It's going to be amazing, right? The way they see, they invite people from the outside. They're not stubborn and said, hey, we know everything. Right? And the Emirates Airlines is run by Brit. The Future Accelerators is run by Indian. The people at the Future Loop, one guy is the former director of the London Underground and New York Subway.
Yeah.
So they're really smart. You can learn so much, right? And while everyone says like Dubai is just burning our planet, it's not true. They're already energy positive. And Mumbai, I haven't been in Mumbai last year because I didn't make it another time. So I was there for a week during TEDx Gateway, and then I planned to make a Mumbai tour in fall, but other things made it not happen. This is going to be the most modern city in 15 years from today in the world. And it's a rotten place. And I think you should all go there because then you've seen both cities.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
And Hong Kong, and in Hong Kong, we were in Hong Kong and in Shenzhen, and Hong Kong is not considered China. It's a separation between Hong Kong and mainland China.
Yeah.
And Shenzhen is some sort of a segue. Shenzhen is more accepted being China. You also immigrate and you also go over the border, and Google doesn't work anymore and Facebook doesn't work anymore. So it's kind of everything we know about China is not true in Hong Kong. You can do all of this in Hong Kong, but once you're in China, it's not existing anymore. Once you're in Shenzhen. And then you see all these maker spaces and the people going together and this kind of 3 generations of technology sitting next to each other. It's very efficient. Hong Kong and Shenzhen is very efficient.
It's really fascinating. I hope to go to Shenzhen. I was supposed to go there last year, but I hope I will be able to go there in the fall. I would really like to understand the ecosystem and how to tap into it. I mean, how to make it a part of my startup and future startups.
Yeah.
I mean, I got a really funny thing. I was part of this urban tech accelerator in Brooklyn last year, and I got I got a redesign on my PCB in our solution, so a new PCB design. So it took 2 weeks, and it cost me 700 euros. And I got an offer from a Danish company, and they offered me to do it for 25,000 euros, and it would take 6 months. It's just like, and it was, I got like 30 files from this company. I mean, 3D files, production files, bill of materials. It's just amazing. So time is really the critical factor for me. So it's not just about price, but I mean, they have so much insights. I mean, that's the place where everything is done when it comes to consumer electronics.
I'm happy to run the Hong Kong tour in fall once traveling will be working again. It's 3 days in Hong Kong and 2 days in Shenzhen.
Okay.
And
Well,
4 to 5 conversations every day, and every evening a social gathering, social meeting, or a dinner with a local.
Yeah.
So it's
sounds
very
really-
intense, but it's not. This is not gameplay. It's very intense. It's not. I mean, gameplay. It's fun, but it's not vacation.
Yeah. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, it does. It does.
Cool.
So, see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Yes, I'll be there.
I hope you enjoyed today. I'm looking forward for
Yes.
day 5.